Today I want to welcome Ewen Clark from the UK. We're very privileged to have Ewen come visit us. He came to just specifically for us, and then he's fitting in some other meetings around the place. Just kidding. But he is going back soon, so it was really kind of him to come and do this talk. I'm sure that this talk is going to be really interesting for those people who are doing anything with Agentforce and having trouble getting their agents into production or moving them between environments for different testing. So Gus is nodding away curiously here. So I'm going to hand over, I think that's everything that I wanted to say before we start. So I'm going to hand over to Ewen and let him tell us all about Copado and what they do to deploy agents.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter. So massive thanks for organizing this, by the way, getting everyone to give up some of their Wednesday afternoon. I really appreciate it. I hope that today will be informative and also short, so that we can come to the real reason why we're all here, which is free pizza. So very briefly, and yes, you know, I am from the UK. It was a real drag having to come to Australia at this time. You know, I've really not enjoyed the weather. I haven't enjoyed the food or the hospitality at all. But a very brief introduction to myself. So I've actually had several hats at Copado. I've worked at Copado for about 4 years. I've been a principal DevOps architect. And before that, I've worked with, of the top 20 Salesforce customers, I've worked with more than half of them worldwide, doing both homegrown and vendor-based solutions. So if anyone wants to talk to me about Jenkins, Azure pipelines, etc., I am contractually obliged to tell you, no, you can't use them. They don't work. And we can see that I have some glowing recommendations from previous customers as a tolerable individual and even occasionally useful. So what are we going to talk about today? First of all, introductions, etc. Also, Agentforce. So what is Agentforce? We'll be going into the basic building blocks of Agentforce. This is not a session around building Agentforce. We're not going to be talking about the Agent Center. We are going to be talking, of course, about testing and deploying Agentforce. It's no good having the world's best service agent sitting in a dev org when we need it in production. And then finally, we'll be talking about trials, training, and Q&A. And there will be a prize at the end for the first person to sign up for our success community. And well, the first 6, 7 people will get a notebook, which is very exciting, and I'm sure you've not got any others. So a little bit of, again, housekeeping from my perspective. This is our forward-thinking statement. I'm sure you've all seen them. This is here to keep me out of jail with Salesforce, or even worse, to have a conversation with our legal counsel. So this is absolutely our opinion. This is not endorsed by Salesforce in any way, and it comes with these standard parts around generative AI. Does anyone have any questions at this point before we take a quick look at what Agentforce is? Very good. So what is Agentforce? It's been a while since, was it TDX 2019? The first time it was announced, I think. It's been a while. And we do now, of course, live in an AI world. So what is the history, or what is the evolution of AI? We all remember chatbots, right? We remember the really simple days where, you know, you've got a case number, it would decipher information for you. In Scotland, we used to have, it used to be in Gaelic, right? And you couldn't skip the Gaelic at all. And nobody in Scotland actually speaks that language. So it was very, very frustrating. It was a very frustrating way to get through. And I always used to just select sales, right? Because it would only have pre-recorded instructions, and you knew that if you press sales, you'd get to a human quicker. Then we had copilots. So copilots would give insight. So that would be things like e-commerce portals like Amazon. I'd be able to ask, where is my order? And it would be able to provide information about where it was. What's the status of my return or my refund? So they're actually able to, they have a limited information and a limited ability to actually generate and learn from data. Agentforce, agents is of course completely different. So it's nothing like that, right? It understands the full context of your business. And of course, it's informed by more than just the LLM. So it utilizes the reasoning engine. Anyone want to throw it out there? Atlas, exactly. So it's actually utilizing more than that. It's utilizing structured and unstructured data within your org and wider. And that, of course, is why Data Cloud is so intrinsic to our conversations here. So I'm preaching to the choir. We all know how amazing Agentforce can be. And of course, we then have The next step, autopilot agents, running anonymously and also able to impact our metadata layer within our orgs. So this is where we start to see proactive AI. Is that scary to anyone else in the room? Should be. Should be. Scary, but every time that we're afraid, we're pushing boundaries, aren't we? So if we don't get ahead of it, we'll get crushed by it. So Agentforce, I'm not going to dwell in what makes it up, okay? You guys, I'm sure, all know it. Who here's built an agent? More or less, more or less. Who here's deployed an agent between orgs? I can tell from your face. Yeah. So what do we look at? When we look at fundamentally what is driving these, we've got roles, actions, data, guardrails, and channels, right? These are what essentially make up the various elements within Agentforce. So when we think of roles, of course, we've got service agents, products agents. When we talk about Copado, of course, we're talking about plan agent, right? The ability to start planning out your user stories, your CI/CD process. Build agent, able to go in and actually make changes in an org. That's something that we might know as agentic, utilizing a metadata layer to do so. Then, of course, we've got those actions. So what is that specifically supposed to do on that topic? Data, of course, both are structured Salesforce data, but even when we look at Agentforce, things like CSVs, right? PDFs. We'll take a look in a second. I can import a PDF into a plan agent in Copado, and it can pull that data out for me. I can import an enterprise WSDL from an org and quiz it. I can start asking questions about redundancies. Do we have duplications of permissions? Guardrails, you know, what is that famous saying? Agentforce is incredibly powerful compared to previous iterations of AI in the workplace, but with great power comes great responsibility. Exactly, yes. So therefore we have guardrails. We've all heard the talks about ethical AI, right? The ability to have content control, response control, and channels. So has anyone here worked with WhatsApp integrations with Salesforce? Yep. So e-commerce platforms, particularly in Asia, very, very common WhatsApp for business. Personal WhatsApp obviously has been discontinued. Got a lot of colleagues who are quite upset about that, but nonetheless. When we think of Slack, so one of the things that we provide is a complete integration with Teams and with Slack, creating a deployment channel able to quiz directly your agent in Slack. Who knows what the future holds? Facebook Messenger channels, right? So that is our AI architecture. Any questions at this point? Because that is what we're going to talk about. What is Agentforce? And then we're going to move into taking a look at building it and how it's used. Very good. So a simple example of an internal user utilizing an Agentforce agent here. So I'm asking it, here's a user story. So a Copado user story is a vehicle for change within an org. It's within the CI/CD process. And here I've got technical specs because it's coming over from my ALM, Jira, Azure Work Item, whatever it might be. Now, I'm a developer. This is my least favorite part of my job, right? I just want to sit down on VS Code, thank you very much. I don't want to tell people what my code does. I don't want to have to talk to a release manager and actually get my specifications. This is a great example of an agent. So this is Copado Plan Agent, actually improving what's on my user story. It's giving me a more detailed natural language understanding. So we can use this on a user story, on a whole release. So a release is obviously maybe 100 user stories. I can use it to actually create release notes for me. So it's an example of an agent being used in the Copado context. And I'm sure that we can think of 1,000 different sales agents, service agents, whether you're talking about interacting with an opportunity or a case or something custom, which we'll look at in a second, like a booking. So of course, we have external users as well. And there we go. So this is an example, classic hotel example, right? I don't know why, but we always love using hotels as examples, don't we? But here we've got the agent, and I'm looking at making a booking. I'm going to ask what activities are available at that time. Is there space in those? It's interacting with our org, and it's providing us with examples. And this particular agent is able to make a booking for me. It's able to make a completely custom object. It's able to fill that data in from the conversation, from the prompt, and then actually generate records within production. And this is for an external user. So two very, very simple use cases there. Both internal users within the Salesforce org, and obviously your community users as well. I'm not going to talk much about building Agentforce for two reasons. One, you guys probably know better than me. And secondly, we're here to talk about testing and deploying Agentforce. But very briefly, what I do is I talk about DevOps and about the SDLC. This is the SDLC of Agentforce. Is it different from any other SDLC? No, it's not, right? It follows the same principles as all other software development. We've got our plan, we've got our building, right? Testing, deployment, and monitoring. What is different, of course, is the tool set that we're using for this. So we are utilizing those Salesforce tool sets. But we'll see in a second how Copado can be used with topic creation. So we can be creating those classifications, the descriptions and scope of the topics, whether they're actions, so service agent actions, interacting with a case, sales agents interacting with leads, opportunities. And of course, we'll actually be utilizing the agent builder to use the building blocks here and pull them together into a user story so that we can start utilizing the CI/CD process. So, testing and deploying. Who has heard of DevOps? Lots of nodding heads. Who hasn't heard of DevOps? The Copado employee there is confused. Who hasn't heard of DevOps? Nobody, right? We all understand the principle of DevOps. What is one of the pillars of DevOps? It is the testing phase. The testing phase. Now, what is the built-in Salesforce test for test agents, for testing agents? Testing center, exactly. And the testing center is advanced response validation, right? That's what we're essentially testing with the test agent. We can also do some scalable testing as well, right? We can say, okay, what if we had 100 million questions come in at once? However, with Copado, we actually go beyond that. So we start looking at not just correctness, harmful content, precision, but also we add the human validation element in here as well. And this is very, very important. We're adding in UAT, but we're making it scalable and replicable. So in a second, we'll take a look at Explorer, which is essentially how a human can click through one test suite, point and click as well, declarative, that can be recorded in an automation script, automation language, and utilized to create full regression suites. We also do business assurance testing. What is one of the scary things about agents? When we look at their actions, they're creating records in Salesforce. What if we work at enterprise and that triggers an integration to an off-platform tool set? Okay, what if we've got Oracle or SAP? What if we've got a complex ERP system? Who here's worked in manufacturing? Who's here worked with big manufacturing clients? Right. Almost all of them will have something. If we're lucky, it's an SAP S/4HANA. If we're not, it's some on-prem ERP system. If we're even more unlucky, it's something that they built in the 80s in COBOL, right? If we can't do end-to-end assurance testing when we're looking at agentic actions in our orgs, we are going to find huge issues and they're going to snowball as we go. So using Copado Explorer, using robotic testing, it is platform agnostic. So you can click through the full end-to-end life cycle of an object. And of course, once we go through testing, we have that monitoring state as well. And we'll see in a second how we can help automate some of these processes. So CI/CD, that is the process of creating user stories. Then we have testing, and finally we have AI sitting on top. So we've got AI-enabled DevOps, visibility and extensibility, low-code testing, Agentforce testing, and that autonomous exploration. And then we have the AI layer sitting on top. Metadata awareness is very cool as well. I can talk about that for a long time. Anyone here use things like Happy Soup, the Salto thing for metadata and dependency analysis? Yep. So the metadata awareness is very interesting. We can talk about that because, of course, agents might actually be triggering Apex as well. So we can be using metadata awareness to look at our code coverage, or more importantly, our outcome coverage, because of course we don't just write test classes for coverage, do we? So a brief look then at what is a user story in Copado. It is a Salesforce native application, right? So it is from the App Exchange, you download it into a governance org, and then you plug all of your development estate, your testing estate directly into it. And what we do is we utilize a user story, normally with an integration with Jira. It creates a one-to-one relationship. And what you actually do is commit metadata from a development org directly to the user story. It automatically creates a feature branch for you in Git, so you don't even need Git knowledge. I imagine a lot of you are quite comfortable with Git. However, it's very useful to have a solid automated Git strategy. So the branching strategy is maintained for you. You can commit your changes directly to it, and you can use that AI to actually accelerate agent topic creation. So we asked it, generate a list of instructions for an agent with order management topic. Right? It's specifically designed to utilize our internal knowledge base to help accelerate that topic creation. Then, of course, we commit our changes directly to the org, and we select the metadata utilizing MD API. With Velocity, it's a little bit different, of course. But generally, we're simply committing our changes from a development org, and then we're deploying them forward. And of course, there are some key dependencies that we always talk about. Once we've got our user story, we can utilize our built-in agents to start giving me best practice for release notes. We can use it to assist us with deployment failures, right? Because it's drawing on the Copado knowledge base, it's drawing on our professional services documentation, it's drawing on Salesforce documentation, and it can help you generate, for example, if you have a deployment failure, it will actually help you provide assistance to solve it. How do we build confidence with agents? So response correctness is going to be pretty vital, and I think this is going to become increasingly important. So the test center will provide response validation, essentially, the first point here. But there are many other elements of testing, specifically for agents. So the human verification element that I talked about, the end-to-end automation, and we can actually use agents to validate and test our agents. Now, is that a bit of a circle? Yes, it is, but I'll explain how it works later. So we're testing for things like similarity, right? So result similarity, topic coherence, faithfulness, context precision, relevance, etc. All of this can be done utilizing Copado robotic testing. And in a second, we will take a look at a video where it's doing just that. How does it actually work? So this is the architecture behind it. I will share this deck with you, okay, so everyone can see it. Don't worry. But what we're looking for here is the Copado AI is acting essentially as an unbiased judge. It's looking for those sentiment analysis, it's looking for that context, and it's providing that to us in a single platform. So there we are. Why is it hard? Why is testing AI agents hard? Because you don't get the same answer twice, right? So what can we do? Well, we could use something like Selenium, right? We could use another scripting language like Cucumber or Gherkin. We could ask it to do the same thing over and over again. But what we can do with Copado is we can parameterize this as well. Who has seen like a regression testing suite used for maybe cases that's gone and done 3 of the 10 record types that you've got? Because it gets tedious. It gets tedious, people forget. And then changes are made. Changes are made, that's not communicated to the automation testing team. So when you have deployments and testing working together in a single platform, all changes run through that regression suite. And We'll take a look in a second at that end-to-end testing as well. So before I go in and we take a look at the product itself, does anyone have any questions? No? Excellent. So let's take a look at some verification. So this is Copado Explorer. So this is a user story, and I've run a functional review here. So what we're doing is we're essentially using the CRT platform. And what we're going to do is we can see we've got a feature, we've got our test execution steps here, and it's going to launch it in app. So it's actually going to, in a second, I'll start the review, and it's going to log into the org that we've got the credential for, and it's going to run through these steps for me. I'm able to click, point and click in a development org, in a test org, and I can then record my findings as well. So in a second, it's going to open up CRT, and we'll see a live exploration session. You can capture OAuth tokens as well. So if you guys are using MFA, for example, when you're logging into a development or testing sandbox, you can utilize CRT to store those tokens. So it will log in for you automatically. And here we go. We're going to run through, essentially, our test suite. And it's going to be recording each of our clicks using keywords. So if you're familiar with Selenium, which often uses HTML tags in testing, doesn't work quite so well with Salesforce. Shadow DOMing, right? Salesforce is quite resilient to using automation testing tools. What CRT will do, and we'll see in a second, we'll look at a robot script, it uses keyword searching. Now, this has two massive advantages. So here we can see it's navigating to a URL, it's clicking, right? It's actually got text locators for each of those clicks. And we can see right now what I'm doing is actually going into setup, and it's going to record each of these activities, whether I'm typing, whether I'm clicking, changing windows. We can see right now I'm going directly to my agent. And what we'll see later is that I can utilize this for my deployments as well, because this is making material change to an org. So if you're thinking, how can I automate the deployment of an agent? If you're deploying maybe 3 or 4 environments, you've got dev, test, int, UAT, production. Do you want to have to repeat the same steps over and over again manually? No. Yes.
You say they could one steps, not just using agents, but most one steps across any.
Yes, we can. Yes, yeah, I'll repeat the question. So the question was, can we utilize these scripts as a post-deployment step for any non-Agentforce style thing? Yes. Yes, you can. The one I always think of when I think of this is digital experiences. Yep. Moving the metadata of a digital experience is a quarter of the effort, isn't it? It's all of the post-deployment activities. You can absolutely script it. And you can utilize the plan agent to parameterize that as well. So I don't need to go in and say, okay, for every single record type, do this. I can utilize the URL. I can pull that in, and I can variabilize it as well. So yes, you can. So here we are. Here I'm actually recording findings. So I'm just using type. I can circle it with a red pen on the screen. And you can see here the agent is not responding. Classic devs, right? They've done something wrong. And here we can see this is a step-by-step, which is going to be turned into a script. And there we are. I've finished my exploration. And here we are. We're directly in the CRT platform. We can have a video here. You can watch it by video. You can record your finding. So if we go down to here, we can see each of these is a separate step. That finding can automatically become a bug in Jira and in a user story in Copado. All of the replication steps have been recorded. So the developer responsible for this particular user story, this particular change, doesn't need to try and read what a tester has written. If they've written anything, let's face it. They've just said, fix it. Doesn't work. Yep, do it again. Why did you get a job here in the first place? I've heard them all. We can see here that all of those steps have been automatically added to my report finding. I don't need to do anything. I just click a button. It generates a Jira ticket for me, generates a user story in Copado. It can assign it to the original developer. So there's a chain of blame, sorry, a chain of responsibility. And here we can see there's the user story created for me in a flash, right? I've gone in and I've performed an actual UAT test, which has now become a functional review session attached to a user story, sent back to the developer for fixing, and they know exactly how to replicate it. And that has been scripted, and we can convert it into a test job. So that can either be copied into a regression suite, or it can be a standalone test run as well. So that's the Explorer. And you can see there the script snippet. That can be copy and pasted. That is written in robot framework language. So there you go. And you can send this over to an automation testing team for review. They can be putting it into a regression suite. You can also schedule those regression suites as well. So don't know anyone else who likes running things overnight. You can absolutely run your regression suites overnight. With multiple robots in the same instance, you can run multiple regression suites simultaneously. And to our end-to-end process, yes, I could click through from here into SAP. I could log into SAP. I could verify creation, deletion, whatever CRUD we're doing in SAP as well. If it's web hosted, you can have a single Explorer session that goes across multiple different platforms, which we think is pretty cool. Very, very difficult to do that with more traditional testing tools. So, does anyone have any questions on Explorer? Yes, sir.
You've got obviously a number of recordings in there. There's obviously a lot of information being stored. Where is that being stored? And obviously, that would take up a significant amount of space.
Great question.
Every step, we're recording all of this information. Where do we store that?
It's a great question. So the question for those of you on the call, the question was, where is this data being stored? We've got, as you say, videos. We've got significant, sometimes significant regression suites. So it's cloud hosted, AWS, sits on AWS. We have either shared or normally we have separate AWS instances for your CRT. We have yet to see any storage issues. It's an AWS architecture. It's very flexible. So it's stored in the cloud. It's not stored locally. Does anyone here have the joy of doing on-prem testing for desktop applications or anything like that? No, good. I'll move swiftly on then. There is a connector. It's called Q Connector. You can run on-prem testing as well. Our focus is obviously the cloud. However, some of you may deal with legacy on-prem systems. It is still very important to make sure that you can test locally. But if it's cloud hosted, then we run it in the cloud. Any other questions on the Explorer? We are obviously talking about Agentforce, but you did raise a very good point here. Yes, you can script any sort of pre or post deployment step using this, and you can add it as an automatic pre or post deployment step in Copado. So what I do in Copado is I've got a user story with metadata attached to it. I add a pre-deployment step maybe of enabling Agentforce in that org, enabling Einstein AI. It will go through. I only need to click that once in my dev org. I attach it to the user story. It will run it in all the higher environments.
Sorry.
No, the questions are good, my friends.
I'm assuming that you also script the order of execution, essentially, so to ensure that things are being executed and activated before it makes something fail.
The question was, can you sequence these actions? So if it's a single Explorer session, of course, it's automatically sequenced by virtue of you doing the clicks in order. You can have multiple different scripts running, and yes, you can sequence them absolutely. It wouldn't be much good doing one before the other. Absolutely. This is particularly relevant, by the way, if we're doing any data transformations. So if we're moving test data, for example, you might have scripts which are moving test data into an org. Well, you can't be deploying test data that contains fields and references that don't exist in that destination org yet, because that's the metadata we're moving. It's a very good question. I want to talk about independent agent verification a little bit. So this is where we're utilizing the agents themselves to essentially run testing. So what we're doing here is we can see I've got a series of suites within here. If you take a look at the language as well, it is very clear English. So it utilizes keywords for almost all of these commands that are being done. Even I can understand what click means, right? I can understand what enter text means. They're very, very easy to run. And we can see here that it is running this live test suite. So we're going to verify that it requests an email. Here we're checking for similarity. So we can set parameters and thresholds for each of these. So I'm using the plan agent here. This option here is to use the plan agent to variabilize this. But I'm going to create a booking. So this is actually going to verify that it is creating a booking. It's creating the topic is precise, verifying it recognizes the request, but it's even going to test the action within this agent as well, because this is going to create a booking for me. And I can go in and I can verify that that record's been populated correctly. So we're testing responses, we're testing content, the factuality and quality, but also the actual actions. So the topic actions can be validated as well. All in one test script, all in one session. Of course, you can utilize it for all of the harmful content, right? So the classic example is if someone says, I don't like AI agents, right? We would class that as harmful. We don't like that. We love AI. So here you can see all of these. We're verifying the data is being read correctly. Then we're actually the response relevance, changing topic for factual correctness. And further down in this, we actually have the actions being validated as well. What's another nice thing? So what's the obvious problem here? We're creating records for testing. Okay, I imagine those of us who are architects are going, absolutely, you are not. You can absolutely script in to delete any records created in a certain set of time. It's an automatic part of one of our built-in parameters that we have. So you're not just going and creating the same record over and over again. So we can actually do record-based testing, but keep our orgs clean. Ish. Anyone have any questions on the use of these suites at all? Yes, sir.
Obviously, you talked about deleting records and integrations hanging off the back of those things. Can you somehow inject this as testing and tell it not to in the back end, or?
So that the question was, if it's off-platform, then can we do the same thing? Can we delete records? The marketing answer from Copado is yes, absolutely. The real answer is it depends. Okay, it does depend. SAP, for example, SAP test environments do have quite specific CRUD permissions, I seem to remember. You're Marketing Cloud, aren't you? You're everything, right? Nice. The answer is it does depend on the platform. For example, if it's on-prem, you're gonna struggle. But generally speaking, if it's being created in a web app, then it can be deleted in a web app. A lot of that will rely on permissions, in fact. As a rule, right, if you've got cross-platform architecture, for some reason, the people in charge of the Oracle instance aren't keen on Salesforce people creating records there. Don't know why that is. But if you have permission to do it, then you have permission to delete it. So, and the last one is, in fact, anticipated by yourself, is, of course, automating the agent deployment itself. And it is exactly how we would imagine it. We are doing exactly what we'd expect. We are logging into an org. We're enabling the agents. And you can see here that we've got click text. We've got switch window, type text. So it is quite simply recording the steps that I need to enable Einstein AI. And we can see here in the live testing window, it's running through that script for me. So I think what I recorded here was me actually setting up an agent. We'll see. But we can see, yes, it is. Excellent. So we can see that we're also publishing the Experience Cloud site. I talked about digital experiences, right? We're publishing the site. We're also going to reroute the flow as well. So all of the elements that make up an Agentforce deployment, we can script it out once in our dev org, and then we can pass that through to the rest of the team. I used to basically get massive spreadsheets all the time with a whole list of manual instructions from devs, half of which were relevant and the other half hadn't been recorded, even though they're very important. And so what do we end up with? We end up with different orgs with wildly different metadata sets, because some teams are deploying things with full sets of manual tasks, some aren't. Instead, we quite simply lock down access to higher orgs unless it's using a script. And this is good practice. This is best practice. And we'll see this more and more now, because with the power of automation, scripting means that things are scalable and replicable. I'm not trusting the partner dev team to log into my UAT org that I've got 500 people looking at now. Okay, if you can do it with a script, it must be done with a script, whether it's Apex or CRT. So here we can see, I think, yes, I am actually creating an agent. So we'll give it topics, we'll create actions for it, create an action for a booking, I think I did. But all of it is actually operating in an org. So that really is the fundamentals here of CRT. It is a keyword-based robot framework scripting that's built into a CI/CD pipeline that can be utilized to test not just responses with agents, but everything else that the agent is touching within our orgs and off platform. So providing a unified sense check for Agentforce deployments. Yes, sir.
Whatever we see on the left-hand side, how that is generated.
These scripts here, when you start, you use the Explorer. So when you first start using CRT, almost everyone will use the Explorer because you're clicking on a screen and it's generating the script for you. After 2 months, you're writing it directly in the Q editor because you get used to the language. So the Explorer is very good for UAT testing. You can give it to business users, right? Because they just click a button that says record and they do what they would normally do. And then they can write, no, please fix. When you're an automation tester, when you're a developer, you're much more likely to quite simply write the script yourself in the Q editor. It's not difficult to learn. And you can use the plan agent to do it for you as well. You can write in plain English, write me a robot framework script that logs into my org and disables source tracking. And it will write you a script that will do that for you. Oh, do we?
You're more than happy that. Just, is this part of standard offering, or is it purchase of it?
Sorry, I was reading questions in the chat and I completely ignored you, Peter. I apologize.
It's a sales question. Is this a part of every Copado deployment, or is it an add-on?
That's way above my pay grade. The answer is we do sell them separately. They are not one in the whole. We have something called Copado One, which is all you can eat. You get every AI agent, you get every part of CRT, you get Copado CI/CD, or you can pick and choose like a buffet. So to the questions on the chat, we've got, what are the considerations for data residency? I thought this might come up. We were talking about this earlier. We have data centers for both our GCP, which is CI/CD, and AWS in Australia, both of them in Sydney, I think. So if you have a public sector client, for example, yes, all data is stored here in Australia. If you have Chinese clients, yes, we have an Alibaba server as well. Hooray. Don't ask me any more questions about it, please. Obviously in the EU, so the EU has very, very strong data residency restrictions as well. We have EU servers. If any of you deal with partitioned orgs, anyone here have partitioned orgs with multiple data residencies? Okay, good, because it sucks. However, we can absolutely support both. No problem, Jay. And another one. Are you creating an agent and deploying an agent to an org, or created agent is used to automate deployment between orgs? So that's a good question. So maybe to give some clarity, this is deploying an agent. This is deploying an agent between orgs. It's utilizing a script to do so. The agents that we use are there to assist in that deployment. So you can use it to, for example, improve a test class for higher coverage, for higher outcome assurance. You can use it for increasing release notes, right? For making things more user-friendly, shall we say. I myself have written release notes which have been complete garbage because I know what I'm doing, but the people who are using my tool don't. So the agents here, the plan agent, etc., they're used to assist your CI/CD process and your testing process. This is about deploying an agent for your end users more than anything else. Does anyone else have any questions? Because we are 8 minutes to time and I can smell pizza. Go.
I have a question. So this is like all the happy path testing. And I will say, for example, I have a dev org and it is staging org. And in the dev org, we enable some feature, for example, we enable Einstein AI, something like that. But staging is already turned on. And that's where the script might say, oh, I can't do this. Then what's going to happen there?
Excellent question. So what happens if I am essentially writing a command which is irrelevant? The script will fail. The script will fail. Now, the next follow-up question should be, does it roll back the changes that have already been made? So yes, you can. So it's a consideration that's very important, right? Because if you're running an automation script and it gets stuck at one point, you probably want to roll back all of those changes, right, as best practice. But yeah, it will fail. And actually, I'll bring up my actual org because when we're running sort of that level of complexity, you have a full reporting suite on this as well. So you're going to want to, when you're talking about multiple robots, you're talking about using them as a deployment tool, you're likely to be running a lot of these robots simultaneously. So you want a reporting suite that will tell you failures, time to process, what point they're failing in. If we take a look at the test runs, for example, take a look at a test job, you can see each of the different runs in here. So you can see each of them has a different number. These are the different steps. They will come to a certain step and they'll say, no, we failed at this step. I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean. Dereferencing a null object is incredibly useful. The answer, to be perfectly frank, is no. Salesforce deployments are a black box of are really, really handy and useful. But the reality is we can't pull more data than that out of Salesforce, right? It's not possible. What we can do is utilize AI to assist you in solving those problems. We have an agentic layer which you can actually command it to go and solve the problems for you in the org. If it's a scratch org, go ahead. If it's your shared UAT org, be cautious.
Another quick one. So there is no option to say this step is optional, do it or not do it. Like, for example, if this feature is already enabled, ignore it. Is there any marker we can set like this is optional?
What you're saying is, are there like if statements essentially? That's a really good question, and you'd think as an expert in Copado, I would know the answer to that. I don't. I'll have to get back to you. Because it's not quite the same sort of, yeah, but it's not quite the same sort of syntax as that. So I'm not quite sure if you can just say if it's already done, then don't do it, because it is agentic. It's going in and it's actually following those steps. Yeah. I see your point. I will check because I'm sure that people have raised this before. I don't think so. I think that it's either a yes action or it fails the whole suite. But I'll come back to you with that. Yeah. Oh, and some more questions. Currently, I'm using Copado for pipeline setup. I have a few more pipeline which needs to be created. Can I do that using agents? So can you use Copado agents to set up a pipeline? You absolutely can. The agents, you can use the plan agent to generate graphs and charts, right, for your deployment process. And you could use them, yes, to set up a pipeline. I would say that a pipeline is a complex piece of Copado engineering. It's something that should be very much shared between different teams, your QA team, your release team, your dev team, your business users. I wouldn't say that that's a particularly strong use case for AI. I think a pipeline should be something that's thought about quite considerably. Creating user stories for that pipeline, yes, right? A user story is a small piece of separate vehicle for change. It's a separate piece of work. A pipeline is something that exists for a long time, probably more involved. How does it play with some of the legacy? I knew that someone would mention velocity and VBT. The answer is that it plays fine with it. I would probably lean on Marcello, actually. He's got a lot more experience recently. I would lean on him, and he's climbing under the window, under the table, for those of you who can't see. Jay, the realistic answer is that if you're deploying the older version using the VBT, we don't play particularly nicely with it. When it's the managed package, absolutely fine. If it's supported by the MD API, we've got no issues with it. Does anyone else have any questions? Well, guys, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone. So especially everyone who joined the call. I know that these guys are having a world of fun here. I know that sometimes an hour-long call virtually is long. So a huge thank you. Massive appreciations to everyone. And let's go get some pizza.
Well, not quite yet.
Oh, sorry. No pizza yet, guys.
But yeah, please do thank Ewan for coming along and a good informative presentation.